just wanted to say a few words ahead of this video because these videos come off the back of a huge lot of Eaglemoss Star Trek ships that I picked up recently. And so I've put up all the duplicates on eBay for you to have a look at, and I'll include links around and about the place. So if you've got any sort of interest in getting hold of a few of these to have a look at them for yourself, you can do so for a while at least, because it looks like they're not going to go flying off the shelves. I've tried to price them quite reasonably, so do please go and have a look. And without further ado, I will get on with the main video. Cheers. So here we have a Nausicaan fighter. Funny story, I was so overwhelmed with the number of ships that I got in my lot that I inadvertently got myself not one but two of these, but after I had a lot already. so I was going through, I was having a look at what I had left, and I suddenly realised that, hang on, I've just bought one of those thinking I didn't have one, but I already have one. So I might well be adding to my auctions very shortly because I now have a surplus one. But anyway, let me crack on with the magazine. Now, the Nausicaans were a race that I was familiar with from Star Trek The Next Generation. Apparently they were actually mentioned first in season 2, but we didn't then see them, I think, until later in the episode Tapestry, where Picard is stabbed through the heart by one. And they are basically the bully boys of the Alpha Quadrant. They are sort of thugs for hire. Ferengi use them, others use them as muscle, basically. But in Enterprise, we also saw that they have their own ships, of which this is one. Not massively powerful, but because they are thugs, they are also pirates. And the ships that they were annoying most, it seems, were Earth cargo ships. And so we see them in a couple of episodes with the ECS Fortunate, ECS Horizon. And although this fighter can only do warp 2, which ain't very fast, it's faster than a cargo ship. So these guys can chase down cargo ships operating in packs. But the interesting thing about this for Star Trek is that this is called a fighter. You don't see many fighter ships in Star Trek, not really. We started to see some in the Dominion War a little bit, but this is really the first time, perhaps in Enterprise, that we saw a sort of a limited crew fighter actually sort of engaging ships larger than itself, because I think it's a bit of a misnomer. There's a whole different thing on this that I'm going to do, but if it's a warp-capable vessel, is it really a fighter? Well, in Star Trek, generally speaking, yes, it is. Because, sort of Marquis Raiders, even Federation attack fighters, they're all capable of going at warp. Because there aren't really any carrier ships in Trek lore. Not really. I mean, Galaxy-class starships, yes, they have shuttle bays. But when you get to craft bigger than that, you don't really have ships that can carry them. So they kind of have to be able to get, make their own way. So anyway, let me delve into this before I go off on the massive tangent there. But as you can see, it's a Nausicaan pirate ship. Warp 2. Doesn't say crew capacity there, actually, does it? But it's got plasma cannons fore and aft. So it's and I like the fact that it's got plasma cannons aft, because that makes perfect sense. Because if someone is trying to chase you down, you want to be able to throw fire back at them. That makes absolute perfect sense. And even with Klingon ships, they don't really do that. Everything is thrown forward, which is a bit short-sighted, I think, personally. But there you go. That's just me. I like to keep my options open. So Nausicaan fighter. I'm assuming the cockpit is in there. Warp engines here and here, and shooting out their plasma weaponry there from forward. And basically, although they weren't massively powerful or massively heavily shielded, they worked in squadrons, so typically 3. When they disable the target's engines, one ship would then latch onto it and board it and try and plunder its cargo. The 2 other ships would stay on patrol. So I like the fact that they worked in a sort of tag team fashion, because that makes perfect sense as well. So I like the overall sort of logic of their tactics, and I like the fact that in the 22nd century, there were kind of pirates, and it's just not a side of Star Trek we'd ever seen before in terms of thinking about how stuff gets from A to B on sort of dedicated cargo vessels. It makes perfect sense. We've seen Cardassian cargo vessels as well, I think, since. It's clever. It's a nice idea, and it gives us a chance to see a non-Starfleet ship trying to make it in what is quite a hostile universe without a really extensive Starfleet to back it up. So Enterprise does save the day in one of these episodes, but that's the exception to the rule. And in fact, the cargo captain does make the point that Starfleet isn't always going to be there to save them. So they're going to have to sort of upgrade their engines and so on, so they can actually outrun these guys. Because the cargo vessels are so slow, they can be in space for a year and a half at a time, getting from A to B, because they've got so much mass to move. They're not very fast warp-wise. So, they can't just zip about the place like starships can. So therefore, these guys, once they've got their routes, have every opportunity to be able to intercept them. So they've got to be, they're in trouble, basically, if they get outnumbered and outgunned. And it's not like you can eject and parachute to safety. You've literally got nowhere to go apart from hard vacuum. So it's not ideal. So aft plasma cannon, warp engine. Cockpit up the top there, right up the top. Which makes sense. So a nice sort of section here on these sort of visual effects. Obviously, lots and lots of CG. Interestingly, I kind of assumed this, I suppose, mentally, but the NX-01 is the only major Enterprise in a series that never had a real-world model. So, you only ever see a CG Enterprise. And I had some interesting comments on one of my other videos, actually, that said that in Star Trek First Contact, all the supporting ships were CG, but the Enterprise E was actually a model that they were still doing sort of motion control passes of the camera to do. And I quite liked that, because I think it did have a certain solidity to it that perhaps you don't get with CG so much. I don't know if that makes sense to you. But I kind of appreciate the fact they were still, using a model at that point in time before it moved on, obviously, for Nemesis and so on. But for Enterprise, they were doing a heck of a lot of effects work for a TV show. A lot of effects work, because the shuttles and everything else would have been CG and so on as well. And this is just sort of outlining some of the ways in which they were trying to push the envelope and different techniques they used to get different scale and the sort of virtual sets that were becoming more common. Bit of sort of forced three-dimensional matte shots as well, just to try and get a sense of depth, so you can move the camera, which you couldn't otherwise with a sort of a 2D matte shot normally. So it's all good stuff. And obviously this Nausicaan fighter was also completely sort of CG, but at this point in time this was still relatively new, so they were still sort of quite on the edge of what was normal, and they were using Foundation Imaging, who used to do Babylon 5 work. So, it was very experienced production houses that they were using to do this stuff, as well as their sort of in-house capacity. So we can see here the Nausicaan fighter going through its sort of design history there. But I mean, again, this is one of these sort of sort of single show kind of fighters. I don't think we actually saw it again in another episode, because when you get to the final page here, there's only this Fortunate Son episode that's mentioned. I think we looked at this for when we're looking at the ECS Fortunate model that I picked up as well. The Earth cargo vessels, they could detach from their cargo modules, which made them a bit faster, but generally speaking, they were not heavily armed. They had a cannon, which they could soup up by linking it through to the impulse engines, but that was really about their lot. And it's one thing to have a souped up weapon, it's another thing to hit something with it. Not the easiest of lives, clearly, for the long-range cargo haulers. So let's have a look at one of my two Nausicaan fighters that I now possess. I quite like these fighters, though, because it's one of the ships in the range where, because they're quite square in terms of their sort of overall profile, you actually end up with quite a big model as a result of that. Oh, I've got to be a little bit careful. There's definitely some bendy bits, although the actual model itself is nice weight. There's a lot of the body there, I think, is metal, but can you see there are some quite breaky bits here. These are ailerons, and they're not being held on by much, so you just got to be a little bit careful with little bits like this, and all of these little spiky bits at the front here. Can you see those are just asking to get themselves knocked off? Unfortunately, it's just the nature of these things where obviously when they're CG models, you can do whatever you like in that. But I guess if they'd done these as real world models, they would have to have done a slightly different approach with them, because details like that would get knocked off pretty easily, I would imagine, even if you weren't trying to. I mean, when you think about it, none of these sort of original series ships had sticky out aerials and stuff. I mean, I'm looking across the room at my my Enterprise Romulan drone ship and thinking, yeah, you'd have no chance of using that as an actual filming model, because it would just have all the little antennae would be getting knocked off it in 2 seconds flat. So it's just a straightforward slot on the back there for this one. So that's a distinct bonus. But it's a nice little ship, and because it's CG, of course, there's lots of interesting curves and stuff that they can do on it with a more modern CG. So it looks very, very fluid. It looks aggressive. It looks like it means business. So I definitely like the modelling of it. And it's interesting that it's got the ailerons, because it's that very clearly implies that it's designed for atmospheric use, and it can sort of roll on its axis very, very easily with those present. But I would have thought you'd need more control surfaces than just that. But then I suppose it has thrusters to allow it more manoeuvrability as it needs it. So that is my overbought Nausicaan fighter. It just goes to show that you can get a little bit carried away with eBay if you're not careful. So that's it for that one, and I'm going to try and get another one done so that I don't need to worry about it when I'm doing Cosmic Council tomorrow night. And do join us on Cosmic Council on Wednesdays every fortnight, when we just sort of shoot the breeze and talk about collecting and stuff of that nature. Cheers for now.